Hello, guys and girls. The program you are about to hear will be both fun and educational, but it is not a substitute for medical advice. Although we are doctors, we are not your doctors. Hello, and welcome to Travel Medicine. As always, I'm your friendly neighborhood internal medicine doc, Dr. J.
Hey guys, this is Dr. Santhosh, your pediatric infectious disease doc and researcher. Happy holidays, all.
Your infectious elf on the shelf.
Yeah. That would be so creepy if you actually. It's just, he's watching you and he'll give you polio if you don't clean your room. Yeah,
Just
that's creepy.
imagine the elf on the shelf is sitting there in the middle of the night and you just hear a little cough.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd freak me out. Yeah. Well, let's see what we can do more if we think about it with infectious self on the shelf.
That said, it's the holiday season. Da, 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 da. And
Yeah.
Dr. J and Santosh too have got some great Christmas science for you.
Oh, save that forever. Oh my gosh, that has to be our annual holiday, Christmas, New Year's, all the things for winter
Medical
holidays.
stories, what'll you do
Ta-da!
when Journal Club comes to
Yeah.
town? Although it's not.
You started to go into Louis Armstrong for a second, and I'm not but mad at it. I absolutely love it. But yeah.
I wonder
Yeah.
how many low budget theme or no budget themes we have come up with over the last decade. I bet it's a lot.
There's quite a few, absolutely, yeah. And this isn't not just the themes that are actually full-fledged songs, but also your weird screaming siren irritating thing for the Journal Club. No, not for Journal Club. Sorry, for Around the World in 80 Plagues. It
Oh,
hurts my
there's
ears
a
every time.
few in the works that'll be
Oh no.
I'll be stuffing your ear stockings with later.
I believe it.
But
Yeah.
this is our true paradoxical non-denominational Christmas special.
It doesn't matter who or where you are. In the United States, Christmas is a very cultural thing out here, Josh. Is that I was raised, 100% Hindu, and it's just we're America now. We put up a tree and we give presents. And I've had that from when I was a little kid, and I'm very thankful that my parents did. So this is really just for the giving the gifts and having fun part of it.
I also love the Hanukkah ornaments for the Christmas trees. I find that to be delightfully charming and inclusive.
Oh, I love it.
So
Yeah.
I have gathered a selection of medical articles, some of admittedly dubious power,
Okay.
um, that all go over various Christmas traditions in the U.S. and around the world, and we can talk about some of the studies that have been done about them, and have a
Okay.
little bit of fun. Um, don't take it too seriously. Grab your milk and cookies, and let's enjoy it. Let's get into this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I want you to come up with a list to begin with. When you think of Christmas traditions, U.S. or
Yeah.
around the world, what are some things that come to mind so I know what studies to pull to talk to you about?
I'll start us off with a fun one. In Spain, I think it's called La Cagon or something like that. And I might be completely wrong, but it's a little pooper. It's a pooping thing that sits in the corner of the nativity. I don't know what to do with that, but
Oh,
that's
you think we can't find a Christmas story about poop, my friend?
it's oh sorry, I take it back. I take it back. Cagatillo in Catalan in Spain. The Christmas log that poops nougat.
So El Cagana literally means the pooper, and he's depicted as a peasant wearing the
Right.
traditional Catalan red cap, the
Yes,
baratina,
yes.
with
Yeah.
his trousers down, showing a bare backside, and defecating.
Right.
Um,
So there's Kagan and there's also Kagatio, which is the Christmas log that poops nougats. So I don't know what it is with Christmas and pooping in Catalan in Spain, but
I mean, you're fertilizing the earth. You
sure.
have the health of body, the peace of mind required to make a
Yeah.
nativity scene.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we can. There's probably other reasons, but yeah, we can stretch it. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so let's see. What study can I find that involves poop? Well, I guess we'll open with one of the grosser ones and then bring it above the belt to round out. So how about a little story I like to call Sugar and Spice and Everything Butthole?
Oh, so we are talking about Kagan and that kind of a thing. Okay, gotcha.
Hey, I asked
Yeah.
you for a tradition. I have a whole file of holiday adjacent medical stories.
If you overdo the sugar or the spice, you will definitely adversely affect the butthole. So okay, I'm on.
Well, let
I'm
me
with you.
this is probably one that if our one-time co-host you may have heard last week, Dr.
Yes.
Ward, our ER physician, would probably be more familiar with than you or I.
Okay.
Um, but have you ever heard the phrase "sugaring the rim" in a medical context?
Yeah, because very typically sugaring the rim is to make. Correct me if I'm wrong. A margarita, is that correct? So if you're making a nice alcoholic cocktail, you put a little bit of lemon juice or something around the rim of a glass. You dip it into granulated sugar, and that's sugaring the rim.
Sure. What
Okay.
do you suppose that might be in a medical context?
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and say that I do know some of this stuff is that rimming or the rim will often be used to talk about the anus, the ring of the anus. So God, is it actual sugar? Like, are you putting sugar on the rectum or the anus or something?
Yes. Yes, you
Oh,
are. It's
okay.
anal sugar, which is not sugar that tastes like a butt, but
Okay.
sugar to be placed on the anus. And this is let's see, what's the most delightfully wintry way to phrase this? Um,
Okay.
the chance of a doctor sprinkling sugar on your butt is low, but never
Okay.
zero.
Oh, yeah, if we're getting into statistical probabilities, you're right. Nothing is 100%, nothing is 0%. Sure.
And of
Okay.
course, this is for the prolapsed anus, which
Oh,
is
okay. Okay, go ahead, go ahead.
so a prolapsed anus is when, for frankly, it could be a wide variety of reasons. When the inside of your large intestine or colon, for one reason or another, becomes swollen and edematous or fluid filled, and then falls to the outside. So when
Yeah.
the rim of your butt turns inside out, it's not
Yeah.
pleasant, and
No. No.
usually it's reduced with a finger, but sometimes there's so much fluid that you can't actually push the butt back inside the butthole.
Okay, okay. So, and we often think of the intestine, as kind of this very thin hollow tube, right? But our colon, especially if you were to go into the pathology lab and or the you go do an autopsy or something like that, or you take a biopsy, it's quite thick. You have a mucosal layer, you've got a muscular layer in there, you have a media layer that's full of elastic tissue, and a nervous layer, which is how you sense that you're full and that kind of a thing. So that wall, the actual wall of the cylinder, can become full of fluid, can become inundated with fluid. And number two, for everybody out there wondering, prolapse is a fairly general term for any kind of hollow organ falling out like this. So folks out there, rectal prolapse is what we're talking about today, but you guys may have heard of a uterine prolapse before, which can happen if the pelvic wall is weak, or the pelvic floor, I should say. So,
Or
okay.
even or even a stoma prolapse. So
Oh, sure. Oh,
if you have a colostomy and the tissue through which you poop in the stomach also falls out from that artificially created hole, you can also sugar the rim as well to get it back in. So this is not
okay.
something that is done routinely, but if you have a fluid-filled or very swollen prolapsed organ, whether it's a
Right.
stoma or a butthole, um, and you can't reduce it with your fingers, what you do is you can sprinkle some sugar on it, just regular old table sugar,
Okay.
and that osmotically pulls fluid out.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
allows it to reduce enough that you can then push it back in with your fingers, which is a manual reduction technique. And the
Oh,
success rate on this is about 50% with few to no downsides. At worst, all you've done is, make the prolapsed organ slightly less tart.
okay. So this is osmotic. So sugar is a very large molecule, and if it's on one side of the tissue, so meaning that it would be the inside of the cylinder, but now it's kind of telescoped out. So there's going to be a shift of water because there is high osmolarity where the sugar's at, and it's lower than within the cells, like the actual cells of the intestinal wall. And so the water rushes out in order to equilibrate the concentration. So it goes down the concentration gradient, or I should say up the concentration gradient, to quote unquote dilute the sugar, so that you have both sides. And so now you've got a ton of water coming out of the intestinal walls, and it's not so thick, and it's easier to just kind of push back in. That makes a ton of sense.
So you have to apply granulated sugar, no substitutes, no Splenda,
Yeah, yeah.
no
Okay.
powdered sugar, no baker's sugar, just full on granulated sugar. It has to sit there for about 15 minutes and then you can reattempt the reduction. Now, if you still can't do it, you don't sit there and add more and more sugar. You would then instead contact your surgeon and move for the more aggressive surgical method of reducing.
Sure.
This comes from a paper, Sucrose as an Aid to Manual Reduction of Incarcerated Rectal Prolapse from the Annals of Emergency Medicine.
When, because we select where we want to send our where we want to send our papers for review. I'm 100% certain there was at least someone on this paper that was like, I'm not doing this unless we go to an annals of something. It's got to have that word in there, or I'm out.
Did you hear the one about the guy who shoved a bunch of horses up his behind trying to recreate a nativity scene for Christmas? Don't worry,
Horses.
his condition is stable.
Oh God, terrible. Oh yeah,
All right. Well, now that we've started on such a high note, let's see how far we can fall.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
what's another Christmas tradition that you think of?
Let's see. We got trimming the tree, and we've got candy canes and giving presents and fruitcake. There's always weight gain to go along with that, of course.
Okay. You've given me a lot of different ones to work with. I think I'm going to leave the candy canes and the fruitcakes aside, given our first sugaring one.
Okay.
Let's look at trimming the tree. Um, you ever thought about whether or not your Christmas tree has any medical uses?
Oh, I don't know in terms of like medicinal, that kind of a thing. If we're talking about herbal medicine, what you can make of pine needles or bark or roots or anything like that, I don't
Yeah.
know.
So there is some wilderness and field medicine you can do with pine resin that
Okay.
has some antimicrobial properties. So if you see a pine tree, you can make kind of a paste and take the sap and use it to dress wounds until you can get regular care. But for those of you who have real trees instead of artificial trees in your home,
Okay.
um, let me start by giving the disclaimer. Before attempting to use your Christmas tree for medicine, food, or drinks, make sure that you identify it and the species is safe to eat and the tree has not been sprayed with pesticides or chemicals.
Okay.
So,
Okay. All good things. Yes, absolutely.
specifically, tree types like pine, fir, like the Douglas firs or balsam firs, and spruce are generally edible. Avoid yew trees, which are deadly.
Gotcha. Yes.
Um, so one of the things I always like to do is make a Christmas tree tea. Pine
Okay.
needle tea is very high in vitamin C.
Hmm.
It's a delightful, local remedy or anecdotal remedy for cold and cough, as it is cold and cough season.
Okay. Yeah.
And the pine tea helps to loosen mucus and reduce phlegm from those upper respiratory infections, runny nose, head colds. It can have a little bit of a citrusy taste. You can also use it to kind of steam as a humidifier sort of thing. And it's just you put a bunch of fir or pine needles into hot water and you mix
Okay.
it with a little bit of honey and lemon.
Okay.
um,
Is it like a tea?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And again, it's high in vitamin C, so so it's just 2 cups water, 2 tablespoons of fresh or dried chopped pine needles as they fall off your tree,
Nice.
1 tablespoon honey, and just bring it
Hmm.
to a boil. Let it sit for an hour. Strain out the pine needles,
Yeah.
and
uh,
then reheat
we'll
the
talk
tea.
about why that's important in just a second, but yeah.
And after you've strained out the pine needles, then reheat the tea. Um, and 1 to 3 cups during the onset of a cold will be really nice. And again, it's helpful to stay hydrated. It's not going to heal you faster than any other teas, but it's a nice way to get a little of that Christmas spirit into you.
Yeah. And this is one of these things that we're still struggling with a ton. Josh, we've come through a beautiful era in medicine of bacteriology and even understanding mycology or funguses and a few eukaryotic pathogens that we're really on top of as well in terms of treatment, but we're really still bad at virology, specifically at treatment. And almost everything that we have for viral infections is aimed at suppressing viruses while we kind of float you through the symptomatic parts and this kind of a thing. So it's turning out more and more that the chicken soup, the pine tea, the menthol rubs, like Vicks Vapor Rub and that kind of a thing. All of these comfort care things are really, really important for when you're sick. And so I really love that. I will make a special note with those pine needles. Okay. You don't want to get those stuck. You can definitely cause a problem in the esophagus itself and cause either an obstruction or problem swallowing. It can go stick in there. But for younger kids, especially if they're school aged, that kind of a thing, you can get that stuck, Josh, in the back of the throat, okay, and actually cause a parapharyngeal or a postpharyngeal abscess in the back, which can be very, very tricky and scary to treat. And this happens a lot of the time with fish bones when they get stuck in the back of the throat. But yeah, you certainly don't want to do that with the little kids. So fairly
No.
safe, make sure it's clean and everything, but 100% you're right. Use a nice strainer, probably even one of those like paper strainers. You don't want them to be, you don't want the holes to be big enough where maybe a needle or so can slip through.
Even a cheesecloth
Oh,
works. I mean,
cheesecloth is good. Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely.
so let's move on to one of what I know is my brother's favorite traditions, the hiding of a pickle in the tree as you are trimming it.
What? No.
Yes, yes. In fact, this is a German tradition. A Christmas pickle, and the inspiration for the title of this episode are Christmas Vlasic.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, used to be done with actual pickles, and we'll talk about the medical benefits of pickles in a second.
Ooh.
Nowadays, it's an ornament shaped like a pickle that families treat as a game. On
Okay.
Christmas
Okay.
Eve, on Christmas Eve, parents hide a pickle ornament deep on the tree branches, and the pine needles will camouflage the green pickle, making it especially hard to find. So
Oh, sure.
Christmas
Okay.
morning, the first kid to find the pickle is rewarded.
So
So
this is it's so funny. I know you're saying it's a German thing. There are other traditions like on Fat Tuesday or Mardi Gras in France, and others where you find a small trinket in something like cake, something delicious, but just very classically with Germany, how this is like, yeah, let's put something sour in a pine tree and you find it.
whether or not you grew up hunting for Christmas pickles, but it is
Yeah.
one of my brother's favorite things to do.
Wow.
So let's talk about two different pickle related studies.
Okay.
One for actual pickles. Now, pickle juice contains probiotics,
Hmm.
sources of bacteria that promote a healthy gut, and that comes from cucumbers that have been packed in brine, which is a
Right.
saltwater solution allowed to set until bacteria grow and eat a lot of the carbs in the cucumber. So when you eat fermented pickles or drink pickle juice, you're also getting the colonies of bacteria formed during fermentation. And not all pickle juice is made the same way. So if you have a mixture of vinegar and salt, there's no fermentation, and that pickle would not have probiotics.
Yes, correct.
Uh, interestingly, pickles may make you happier. A study done by the
Oh,
College of William and Mary in Virginia,
okay.
naturally fermented foods like dill pickles can provide you with a boost of serotonin, which is a chemical
Ooh.
responsible for managing our moods.
Uh-huh.
Also, researchers at the USDA's Agricultural Research Service and North Carolina State University found that a health promoting compound, GABA aminobutyric acid, GABA, or an
Hmm.
inhibitor
Yeah.
transmitter, is generated through the fermentation of brined cucumbers. And eating foods high in GABA has been shown in multiple studies to have small but statistically significant benefits, like reducing blood pressure, reducing anxiety from its inhibitor function, and some small boosts to immunity.
Oh, okay. That's really nice. Now, there's been a little bit of a revolution in the past, I'd say, couple of decades, really encouraging fermented foods from the expert medical community. A lot of cultures will say, we've known this forever. And indeed, Josh, pretty much every culture you go to, there will be some sort of fermented food. We're out here in Los Angeles. The famous one that I can think of is if you go to any Korean restaurant or Korean household, you'll find kimchi, which is there. In India, we pickle things like mangoes and lemons with spices as well. And so I don't know that those cultures actively knew about the health benefits. They just really like the taste. But it may have also been, oh, we really love how it makes us feel, especially in, wintertime when you're feeling all glum and blue.
So that's the mood altering of pickles. But the first study, and sort of the one that kicked off all of my research for this episode, although it's not strictly holiday themed,
Yeah.
I recently went to a conference for a hospital medicine update
Yeah.
and learned about a really neat study. and one that is delightfully titled, and you know how I feel about scientists naming things.
Sure.
Um, the Pickle Juice Intervention for Cirrhotic Cramps Reduction, also
Okay.
known as the Pickles Trial.
That's a fantastic trial. Absolutely. See, Josh, you do complain that doctors and scientists don't know how to name things, but this is pretty good.
Every now and again, one comes up with it. So
Okay.
here's the dill.
Yeah. Yeah. Please tell us the dealio.
I mean, I don't want to brine about it, but
Yeah.
muscle cramps are pretty common among people with cirrhosis. And obviously, if you're getting frequent cramps, you're going to have a poor quality of life. And there's really not a lot of options when you're a cirrhotic. Uh,
Yeah, the solution to end stage cirrhosis right now is transplant. You need a new liver. It's one of these things, Josh, we can put people on dialysis, we can substitute for their kidneys, we can put people on heart and lung machines to help out with their, circulation and oxygenation, but we cannot bypass the liver. The number of things that this organ does for us is so myriad and complex that we just can't get by. But all the things that go with it, you feel tired all the time, you're cramped, you have buildup of bilirubin and ammonia, and so you feel irritable and yucky and kind of flat and depressed. It's a bad way to live and die eventually.
Not to mention, for other conditions that experience frequent muscle cramps, we do have, to a lesser degree, some narcotic treatments, muscle relaxants like Robaxin,
Hmm.
Flexeril, things like that. But you really can't give those to a cirrhotic, as the liver is the thing responsible for metabolizing those drugs. And when the liver is not functioning at peak efficiency, those normal amounts that we would give can become dangerous.
Yeah.
So, finding a treatment for muscle cramps in this patient population can be really difficult. So, this trial, the Pickles trial, enrolled 82 patients with cirrhosis and a history of more than 4 severe muscle cramps in the previous month. And it's a really recent study. It was done from December 2020 to December 2021. So,
Yeah.
roughly just under 100 patients over a year.
Yeah, yeah. And this is when you guys are thinking of muscle cramps that like, oh, they cramp up a bit and oh my gosh. No, no, no. This is debilitating. Okay, this is, it hurts so much that I can't move type of a thing, and it can happen with any muscle group really. But you know, it, this is not a joke. This is heavy duty stuff.
So patients were then randomized to 1-to-1 sips of either pickle juice versus tap water
Okay.
at the onset of cramps. So as soon as you start feeling one of these severe cramps, you grab, the pickle jar and go glug glug glug, or you just get some tap water. They
Yeah.
then measured them 1 month later. So just looking at it, if they had had over 4 cramps in the previous month, they'll say, okay, let's look at you for the next month. And at 28 days, they wanted to look at the change in cramp severity measured by the visual analog scale for cramps. Go ahead and look that up. VAS cramps, VAS dash cramps. Let's
Yeah,
let's
this
all
is
let's all go along with the visual
yeah.
scale and see what it's like.
For those of you not able to jump onto a browser window right now, you can think about it a little bit like the faces scale that we have for pain. So being able to read the discomfort of someone by looking at them overall, their body posture, their facial expression, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's think of the smiling to sad crying faces that you see, and
Yeah.
you point to which face is your level of cramp. Um,
Yeah, and this is I I actually really love this, Josh, because it's the same as the pain scale. There's a massive amount of subjectivity to this, right? Because what is a horrible cramp to one person may not be for another, and vice versa. So it's important to know how bad that the cramping is for that person, not like some pure objective theoretical scale. It's this is a very personal thing.
Now, even though this is a randomized, well done study, keep in mind it's going to be very difficult to study one subjective thing with another subjective thing. So, cramps were assessed 10 times over this 28-day period using
Hmm.
interactive text messages. So, I'm feeling, and here's exactly why the vast cramps is such a great scale for this, because Santhosh, I, the cirrhotic patient, start texting you, the researcher, I'm feeling a cramp, and you send back a string of emojis.
Okay, okay. All right. I love it. Yes.
Sad face, eggplant. um,
Josh, I know how much you love ancient Egypt. I personally think we're reaching peak civilization when we are moving towards the use of hieroglyphs in our common society.
can't wait.
We're there. You don't have to.
That's why I said I can't wait.
Yeah.
So, secondary outcomes included the proportion of days with cramps less than 5,
Yeah.
any change in sleep quality, and overall health related quality of life using a different scale or questionnaire, the EQ5D.
Okay.
Now,
Gotcha.
the study actually had really good retention. Of the 82 people they enrolled, 74 of them completed the trial.
Ooh. Okay.
And these people ranged in age from 56, give or take 11 years,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
about half male, half female, 54 to 46.
Okay.
About 41% had ascites, which is that collection of fluid you get that makes your body shake like a bowl full of jelly. Um,
Yeah. Not in a jolly way, but yeah.
well, it is a sign of more advanced
Gotcha.
cirrhosis or liver disease.
Yes.
and the the MELD score, or the model for end stage liver disease score, uh, average 11, give or take 5 points, which again, pretty high. And a
Yes.
lot of these other patients were still receiving other cramp therapies at baseline. So they didn't say stop what you're doing. They just said whatever you're doing, when you start having cramps, add a glass of pickle juice to it.
Okay. Gotcha.
So, at the completion of the trial, the values for the pickle juice versus the control arm were -2.5 points, with again a range of about 3. So, it could be as low as 1, could be as high as 5. Imagine an average of 2.5 points lower on the pain scale for cramps compared with tap water.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Now,
Huge.
didn't change the sleep quality, didn't
Yeah.
change the overall quality of life for these people, but
Yeah.
massively improved. Well, massively. I think a 3 point drop on a pain scale is a pretty massive improvement.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. That it's especially if it's happening regularly to you, anything you can do to not just chip away but to really decrease that severity for every episode. That's important.
Yeah. So this study was in the American Journal of Gastroenterology,
Okay.
and it's really impressive because now we finally have some non adverse event method that we can use to treat cramps. Again, it's not an end all be all, but when you're feeling that level of pain, imagine if I can offer you a home remedy. You can just go out, buy a jar of fermented pickles, not vinegar style,
Yes,
not
yes.
deli style,
Right.
fermented pickles, and just
Yes.
drink the juice. It may actually provide a noticeable difference or improvement in your pain without having to rely on narcotics that may
Mhm.
pose a risk to you, without having to rely on expensive medications that your insurance may or may not cover wholly. I think that's worth doing.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can figure out a good lifestyle change that can affect your health in this way, and do prevention rather than treatment. Although this one is addressing specific treatment, it's always helpful. Absolutely.
Now,
So I absolutely love it. And just like you were saying, Josh, the liver does a lot of things for us. One of the things that it does is it breaks down some medications into less active particles that we can pee out or poop out or sometimes sweat out. And if the liver itself is not functioning and you take a medication to try to help with something, but then it just stays in your bloodstream, you can build it up to toxic levels. So, pharmaceutically, we don't want to rely on a lot of those same medications. And so, yeah, what's better than, just some probiotics and electrolytes? Damn.
now again, this is not about eating pickled foods because that has mixed benefits. Some studies say they're good, some studies say they have higher risk of stomach cancer. This is
Yeah.
just the pickle juice. In-
Yes.
Interestingly, and not holiday related per se, uh, pickle juice is the ancestor of Gatorade.
Oh,
Turns
yes,
out,
that's true. That's true. Yeah.
a long, long time ago,
Hmm.
in a state of Florida far, far away,
Yeah. Yes.
coaches of the sports teams at Miami University
Hmm.
were noticing that when they had their athletes drink pickle juice, and this is not the cirrhotics, this is just regular college athletes who were
Hmm.
getting muscle cramps for a variety of training related reasons, and they would
Sure.
have them drink pickle juice and it would decrease the cramps. Except
Yeah.
most of the athletes really did not enjoy drinking pickle juice. So the coach started adding.
Especially, by the way, you can imagine that like it's 102 degrees outside and you're hot and sweaty and you'd like something cool and refreshing. And then they're like, here, have some brine.
Yeah, in a muggy Florida
Yeah,
summer.
yeah. It was 100% the right thing to take in. You want something that's liquid, full of electrolytes, and especially with the other kind of molecules in there. Complex sugars are important, but yeah, but it tastes awful.
So by adding complex sugars and sweeteners over time to the brine, and a lot of, I don't know, secret steps along the way,
Yeah.
this coach ended up realizing he's like, hey, I can make a sports drink to help all my players that doesn't taste like a bunch of fermented brine. And because it was from the University of Miami, he named it for the Gators, which was the team,
Yep,
and you
Florida
have
Gators.
Gator Aid.
That's it. And it took off. And of course, it was bought by different corporations and everything. But
And now we're back to pickle juice.
here
So
we are. And I'll say the pickle juice, Josh, yeah, way better in this case. And I'd still say pickle juice for those athletes because the one problem that the Gatorade did and the way that they made it, a lot more palatable was, I think, to add way too much simple sugar. So that's the problem with it. Whereas the pickle brine is actually has all the right chemistry with it without that boatload of sugar in there. So the bulk of the study was done at University of Michigan and Ann Arbor. So doctors Tapper, Salim, Baki, and Zhao. There was one gentleman who was involved, Dr. Vinay Sundaram, who was a colleague of mine at Cedar Sinai Medical Center and a massive pioneer in the field of acute on chronic liver failure, and a young person, actually just born a couple of years before me, so he's in his 40s, but he very recently passed away. I think after this publication was received. But yeah, I just want to put a shout out because we remember him fondly of being just a brilliant young mind in the field of liver disease. So yeah, Dr. Vinay Sundaram, one of his last contributions here to science, this wonderful study. So thank you.
moving on to our next holiday tradition, everybody gathers around and it's a time for friends and family and games. And sometimes you'll sit there and play reindeer games.
Yeah. Which I never knew what those actually were. they never let poor Rudolph join in any reindeer games. Like, what are the
Like
reindeer games?
Monopoly. Don't you ever like?
Yeah.
Have you not heard the song?
How is this is the little bit like you shout it out in the
There is
middle
an
of singing
entire
a carol.
generation
Yes,
that
yes.
just shouted at you,
Yeah.
join in any reindeer games, like
Yeah, like
Monopoly.
Monopoly. Yeah, yeah.
So there are a lot of different studies that show benefits to playing board games, which
Mm.
frankly a lot of people only do during the holidays when you have gatherings. Some of us
Yeah,
are
yeah.
gaming aficionados and will play year
Yes.
round, but
Yes.
a couple different ones just worth mentioning. Also, Monopoly is a terrible game. There's so many
It
better ones
really is.
out
Yeah.
there. Just and
Yeah.
and you know what? Hot take: Catan's a shitty game too.
Oh no. Oh,
I said it.
Josh.
I said it, and I'm not taking it back.
Josh, we're one of the nerdiest podcasts on the interwebs. We may just have lost like 90% of our listenership.
Listen, listen out there, nerds. Do better.
Do better. Oh no.
Not apologizing. Catan is a
No, no.
terrible game. It creates just as much bad will as Monopoly does, but you're wearing fedoras and more hipstery clothes.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. So clearly there's some strong opinions here. We can work it out later in the post credits. Yeah.
It's just there's so many great games out there. Don't limit yourself.
Don't, yeah,
Uh,
that's true. That's true. Okay.
but there are great benefits to playing board games. So a
Mhm.
2019 study shows that playing board and card games regularly can help your mental performance as you grow
Yeah.
older. So researchers at the University of Edinburgh did a whole bunch of tests on folks who routinely reported playing non-digital games. So
Okay. Okay.
Hearthstone or Plants vs Zombies are not cutting it.
Yeah, yeah. Among Us. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Also
at
another very divisive. Yeah.
so the study it comes from the Journals of Gerontology. At the beginning, over 1,000 participants, all aged 70 years old or greater, were asked to complete a series of tests assessing memory, thinking speed, problem solving, and overall cognitive ability. For those
Hmm.
of you playing along at home, man, person, TV, woman, camera, is this a rhino or a bear? The same kind of things that we were using to question presidential thinking, regardless of political affiliation back in the day.
Sure.
Then, until the age of 79, so from 70 to 79, each participant took the same series of tests every 3 years. So, this is a
Okay.
longitudinal study looking
Hmm.
at their cognitive ability over time.
Right.
Simultaneously, they were surveyed as to how often they played games like chess, bingo, crosswords, parcheesi, etc. And they specifically looked at ages 70, the beginning of the study, and 76, roughly halfway through.
Okay. Gotcha.
Next, the research team used statistical analysis to look at the relationship between the game playing habits and maintenance of thinking skills. And they also had access for some of them to an intelligence test that the participants had taken when they were 11 years old. How are they getting
Okay.
tests in 70-year-olds from 11 years old? Well, the Scottish Mental Survey of 1947, great name for a survey.
Yeah.
Just a national it's a national survey. Think of the kind of test that you may have taken in the US to study for GATE or any standardized test to assess
Yeah.
school ability.
I'll
Um,
say that it shouldn't be trusted as a well validated, universal measure of intelligence,
no, no,
but
not at all.
okay, but hopefully it's kind of a useful metric, and I believe Josh in this case it was kind of this was a separate kind of secondary
It was
analysis
just
that
it was made available to the authors and included in the analysis. They didn't
got
base it, but they just said, "Look, we have your thinking ability at 70. This is not an IQ test. We have your thinking
sure.
ability at 70, your thinking ability at 76, at 79, and if we happen to have it on hand, what you were like as a child." So we can really look at, were there any significant changes as you aged, as well as with the games. And it turns out that the ones who played games, maintained crisper mentation
Okay.
for longer. And this is excluding factors such as education, exercise frequency, and socioeconomic status, all of which were used to balance out overall.
Sure, sure. You want to try to basically make sure that all of those other factors are either equal or kind of accounted for. So you basically try to have the mental status, or their cognitive ability, as correlated with a single variable as possible. So these are the statistical methods that we use.
And in the US, a study from the American Academy of Neurology pretty much found the same thing. Older adults who regularly participate in card or board games reduce the risk of dementia. And these activities, even just a daily crossword or a weekly crossword, can help to delay the onset of Alzheimer's disease by as much as 5 years.
Sure.
Again, will not stop you from getting it if you are
Right.
going to get but it can delay the onset or rapidity of symptoms by
Mhm.
up to 5 years. 5 more years of clear thinking is nothing to sneeze at.
Especially near the end of your predicted lifespan, when you're in your 70s and 80s. Yeah, absolutely. That's huge.
But I think my favorite one actually doesn't deal with the elderly population at all,
Oh, okay.
but more for what we call cuffing season. Those of you who like to have romantic partners to help get you through the holidays, for good times, for bad, to snuggle with. And if you're
Sure.
looking to reconnect with your partner, a new study finds that Baylor University found that couples who engage in board games together or collaborative art projects, and I want to go into that one in a moment, release higher levels of oxytocin, the hugging
Mhm.
hormone.
Okay, yeah.
Um,
The love hormone, yeah.
yeah, it's associated with bonding. You see it usually when we talk about oxytocin, it's in an obstetrics and gynecology context.
Yeah, breastfeeding
For
specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's associated with bonding, with family cohesiveness. And here's the really one. I know we're talking about board games, but interestingly, researchers found just incidentally that men who paint, like when you do those wine and painting nights,
Oh, yeah, yeah. Or Color Me Mine. That's a
yeah,
fun one. Yeah.
men who paint release even greater amounts of the hormone out of all the groups and couples they studied. And the
Yay.
fact that male painters released far more of the hormone than couples playing board games, than individual women doing any of these activities, surprised the researchers, as did the amount of oxytocin. They
Yeah.
figured that the couples would interact more because they were communicating about games and strategies, and with more interaction, higher oxytocin would be released. Um,
Gotcha.
in fact, those who took painting classes engaged in touching each other more often than those playing board games.
Mhm.
And typically, art or cooking classes are not seen as interactive dates with the partner, but it was turned into bonding time by putting an arm around the partner, by saying good job. So, in order to do this study, they got 20 couples with partners between the ages of 25 and 40,
Okay.
randomly assigned to participate in one of two couple dates: game night or art class.
Okay, got it. Okay.
It doesn't say anything about the diversity of the couples. I don't know if they were LGBT, if they were heteronormative, just 20 couples.
Okay, got it.
The dates lasted an hour. One group
Mhm.
played board games in a home like setting. They didn't play with any other couples or individuals. It was just the two of them, and the games were widely known or simple enough to not require the couples to read the game instructions. So there was probably a level of cultural familiarity.
Okay, gotcha,
Um,
gotcha. So you didn't have to go through the exercise of, okay, what do you do with the second black dice after you skip over the yellow stop sign and the spinner lands on a 7.
Right. Nothing terribly complicated. No waiting for sheep or logs. No yelling about Park Place. Just
Zing.
um, the other group enrolled in painting classes at a community art studio and participated in two groups of five couples, each painting just a simple beach scene. The
Okay.
art instructor intentionally arranged the canvases in a way to reduce interaction between couples. So they really were trying to stack the deck.
Okay.
They then measured oxytocin levels with urine samples before and after each group activities. Hey, we want you to pee in this cup now that you've painted. Um,
Okay, sure. Well, it's one of the best ways to assay for these hormones because that's where they tend to concentrate. But yeah.
They also used a 6 item survey about the couple's familiarity with the activities and their communication, eye contact, and touch. Um, and all the findings showed it wasn't required. It just happened naturally. Finding those small, meaningful ways to interact when eating dinner together, going for a walk, doing things like that. So, if you're looking to get a connection, bust out the board game, go to a wine and art class. Um, it'll help improve your thinking, it'll help stave off any cognitive decline as you age, and it'll bring you closer to your couple. And if that's not the spirit of Christmas, I don't know what is.
All right. Gotcha. Gotcha. I love it. That's absolutely fantastic.
The very last one that we'll do, I'll throw in a bonus because we always leave out milk and cookies for Santa
Yeah.
or carrots for Rudolph.
Yeah.
Um,
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
so, if you had to guess, Santosh, do you think that gingerbread has any sort of health benefit? Because we build gingerbread houses, we
We
eat
do.
gingerbread men.
I don't know if they would be offset inherently by the sugar. It's quite a bit of sugar in a good ginger cookie, but you know, if you load it up with quite a bit of ginger, I know that ginger itself has been associated. Correct me if I'm wrong. Actually, lowering blood sugar a little bit, and then of course anything with if you add your cinnamon and your spices and you make it a little sharp. I always love that. I don't know if it's health benefit, but other than that, that one and a cup of hot cocoa will make you super super happy for a little bit
Well,
and all cuddly.
the complicated answer is it depends partially on the gingerbread recipe. Older
Sure.
recipes dating back to the 16 and 1700s had a wholly different sort of gingerbread than we use today. It was made with ginger, wine, honey, um,
Okay.
cinnamon, highly expensive top shelf spices back in the day. And
Sure,
it was
sure.
almost more like a cake or gooey. And it had
Yeah.
all these different natural herbal sort of remedies that made it more like a fruit cake. Modern gingerbread has replaced a lot of that, and the spices have, of course, become much more commercially available, and it's more brisk. And then, yes, you're really looking at it's the ginger itself, not the bread cookie part of it. But
Okay.
if we're looking at the medical benefits of ginger, a study was done that looked at about roughly 250 people with osteoarthritis, and the researchers gave them ginger capsules twice a day for 6 months, and they had a significantly greater reduction in pain than a control group. Uh, now, this link between ginger and arthritis has been looked at multiple times, and usually we think of ginger as being used to settle your stomach, more of an anti-nausea home remedy than a pain remedy. But
Okay.
a 2015 review concluded that ginger was modestly effective and reasonably safe for those with osteoarthritis. And this
Oh,
was looking
nice.
at an analysis of data from 593 people, with those who used ginger, again, at less than 4 milligrams a day. That I think 6 was the max. 4 was the upper limit of average, and they had a 30% greater reduction in arthritic pain than those who used a placebo. However, the ginger group was more than twice as likely as the placebo group to stop using the treatment or to develop side effects such as heartburn.
Oh, okay. Okay, nice.
identifying the precise benefits, we know it has some anti-inflammatory properties, anti-nausea properties, um, but the exact dose and amount doesn't seem to be quite well studied yet. So whether
Yeah.
it's ginger tea or capsules or lozenges, the maximum recommended intake is 4 grams a day. And again, much less if you're experiencing effects like heartburn, indigestion. Um, it can interfere if you're on Coumadin. It can lead to
Yes.
increased bleeding.
Yes. And
And
that has to do with the pathways in our body, the enzymes that we use in order to break these molecules down.
and in severe rare cases, it can lead to some changes in heart rhythm and atrial fibrillation.
Right.
So
Yeah.
right now, the Arthritis Foundation suggests taking ginger as a powder or capsule, having no more than a maximum of 2 grams a day, divided into 3 doses.
Yeah. And I think this is beautiful because we've found an effect. Okay, that's the observational part. We have a hypothesis. We standardized it. Okay, so you have all right, this is exactly what you want to try, and then you test it. Okay, now this is the important part. It's not that you've landed on something and, oh, this is how it works right now. Now you say, oh, now we have a way to, in a rigorous fashion, take out all of the other variables and everything and study this particular phenomenon. And Josh, we might be right, we might be wrong. It may be that someone takes a step back after this study and says, oh, we used the wrong formulation of ginger or the wrong frequency or dose or whatever. But yeah,
So, all of these are keeping you home for the holidays, home remedies, things that you are not necessarily, your doctor may or may not be informed on, and
yeah.
we're not necessarily recommending that you do or don't do them. But I found it to be a variety of great studies on cookies, on trees, on games, on
Yeah.
pickles, and on a very unusual use for sugar. So,
And it's, well, we do have to ask Dr. Ward. Maybe it's more usual than we actually think.
So that's it for this week. Happy holidays, whatever you celebrate, wherever you celebrate. If you have a Christmas tradition or a holiday tradition that we missed or you'd like us to investigate, go ahead and send it to us. We're still on Twitter for the moment. I will eventually get onto Mastodon. You can find us at the Old Fogies Home on Facebook or by commenting on any of the posts. We are very reachable. We're just not great at media.
Yeah.
So that's
At the thing we do.
right.
Yeah, yeah, that's
We're
true.
working on it. We're working
Yeah.
on it. If you'd like to support us spiritually, emotionally, or financially, links to do that are in the show notes, as well as links for further reading into some of the studies we talked about. For those of you who are supporting us on the ACAST Plus, thank you so much. This week, we will throw up a medical theme song for you. It might be holiday themed, or it might just be a really good workout song that you can jam to while you're working off those Christmas calories.
Oh yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yes, please do have wonderful treats and make stuff for each other and everything, and then listen to our holiday music and dance it all off.
this show is produced by me with a lot of help from Dr. Santhosh, the Christmas elves, and friends. Our theme music is composed by Rachel Ledger. And until next time, drink your tea, get your shots,
Yes.
gather together with friends and family, celebrate the holidays, get in the spirit of giving, go out and do something nice for somebody unsolicited.
Mm.
And when you've done all those, you've earned it. Find a country that's open, climb in your sleigh, and ho ho ho, have some happy travels.
Happy travels, everybody. Take it easy.
Have a good one, and we will see you next year. Although there will probably still be a repeat up in next week.
Yeah.
So
It's okay. We're coming back. We promise. It's just we're also all enjoying our holidays too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until next time, as always, happy travels.
Bye, everybody.